Ready to dive into something we all deal with but don't always like to talk about.
Sounds intriguing. I'm all ears.
Pain, not just the physical kind, but the emotional and even, you could say, the societal kind.
Oh, now that you mention it, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, we're going deep with Conrad Riker's book, Pain, The Ultimate Reality. It's pretty comprehensive. He looks at pain from, like, every angle, biological, psychological, even evolutionary.
I've always been fascinated by how Riker connects pain to the bigger picture. You know, how pain, in all its forms, really impacts us.
So to kick things off, Riker takes us way back to the evolutionary purpose of pain. It's like he's painting this picture of our ancestors in a world full of danger.
Right, where pain was literally a survival mechanism.
Exactly. Like imagine touching a hot stove or getting stung by a bee. Immediate pain tells you, hey, back off.
It's that primal warning system, right? The one that motivates us to avoid getting hurt again.
Crucial for survival. But what's interesting is Riker talks about how humans have evolved to anticipate pain too.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about reacting anymore. We can actually predict and avoid it. Think about it. We wince when we see someone else get hurt.
Oh, I do that all the time. It's like my brain's saying, oop, not going to happen to me.
Exactly. We learn from other people's experiences, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. Like, our brains are constantly trying to protect us, even from pain we haven't even felt yet.
Okay, so pain equals survival. Got it. But here's the thing. Pain isn't always so straightforward, is it?
Definitely not. And that's where things get really interesting.
Because we tend to lump all pain together. But Riker differentiates between all these different types.
Yeah.
Even with physical pain, there's a huge variety.
Oh, yeah. Think about the sharp, immediate pain of a cut versus the nagging ache of a pulled muscle. They feel totally different because they're signaling different things are going on.
And then you've got nerve pain, which, from what Riker says, is a whole other beast. He uses the example of diabetic neuropathy to illustrate this.
Which I think is a great example because it highlights how nerve pain isn't always about damage to your tissues.
Right. It can actually be caused by a malfunction in the nervous system itself. Like in diabetic neuropathy, people experience tingling, burning, or even numbness in their hands and feet.
And it can be a chronic issue, which really shows just how complex pain can be. It's not always a simple cause and effect situation.
Definitely not. So we've got physical pain, we've got nerve pain. And then Riker takes us even deeper into the psychological impact of pain, especially when it comes to chronic pain.
Which is a whole different ballgame, right?
Yeah, he introduces us to this construction worker named John, whose life is totally turned upside down after a knee injury.
And John's story is so powerful because it shows how chronic pain doesn't just affect your body, it affects your whole life.
It really does. John ends up with financial struggles, emotional stress. He even becomes isolated from his friends and family. It's like this domino effect.
It's a really good way to put it. And this domino effect can often lead to things like depression and anxiety.
Yeah, Riker even talks about the potential for cognitive decline. It's like chronic pain just seeps into every corner of your existence.
Yeah. It becomes a whole person experience. And that's something Riker emphasizes throughout the book. He argues that we can't treat pain effectively unless we address all these aspects of it, not just the physical.
Okay, so we've covered physical pain, nerve pain, and the psychological impact of pain. But Riker doesn't stop there. He takes us even further into the realms of emotional and moral pain.
Now that's where things start to get really interesting because this is a dimension of pain that's often overlooked, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. But Riker presents these statistics about the prevalence of mental illness and emotional distress in our society. He really makes the case that these forms of pain are just as real as any physical injury.
Oh, absolutely. They can be incredibly debilitating. And what I find fascinating is how Riker draws this connection between emotional and moral pain.
You mean like how he uses the example of someone feeling betrayed and then experiencing guilt for trusting the wrong person?
Yes, exactly. So it's like the emotional pain stemming from that betrayal actually triggers moral pain when it clashes with our values.
It's like a vicious cycle.
It is, and understanding this interplay is crucial for dealing with these less tangible forms of pain. Riker's point is that we need to acknowledge and address them just as seriously as we would a physical injury.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
It really does. It's a whole new way of looking at pain. You know what's really powerful about Riker's approach?
What's that?
He doesn't just describe these different types of pain, He goes into the actual mechanisms, like the physiology behind it all.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like when he talks about physical pain, he goes all the way down to the role of our sensory nerves.
Exactly. It's fascinating. These nerves are like tiny messengers, They send signals from, say, an injury all the way to the brain. It's how the brain knows something's up.
It's like our bodies have this built-in alarm system.
Exactly. To warn us about danger, it reminds me of that example Riker gives about touching a hot stove. The sensory nerves are what make you instantly pull your hand back.
It's incredible how fast that all happens.
Yeah. Isn't it? And here's the even more interesting part. The brain doesn't just passively receive these pain signals, it interprets them, which is why pain can be so subjective.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. What might feel excruciating to one person might barely bother someone else.
Exactly. And our emotional state, even our past experiences, can influence how we perceive pain, too.
It's like we all have this unique pain history that shapes how we feel things.
Precisely. And this is one of the reasons why chronic pain is so challenging. Because it's not just a one-time thing, it's this ongoing experience that really wears a person down. Riker talks about this woman named Sarah who suffers from chronic back pain. She talks about how it affects every single aspect of her life, her sleep, her relationships, everything.
It's heartbreaking to think about.
It really is. It makes you realize how important it is to have effective ways to manage it. And luckily, that's a big part of what Riker focuses on in his book. He doesn't claim to have all the answers, but he does explore a whole bunch of options, some involving medication, some not.
Well, he does talk about the pros and cons of different types of painkillers, right? Everything from over-the-counter ones like ibuprofen to the strong prescription opioids.
Right. And he emphasizes the importance of working with a doctor to find the right approach and dosage. Because those opioids especially come with risks.
Yeah, like addiction and some really nasty side effects.
Exactly. So it's about finding that balance, right?
Using medication responsibly while exploring other options. I know Riker is a big proponent of what he calls a holistic approach. So it's not just about treating the physical symptoms, but also addressing the emotional and social aspects of pain, too.
Absolutely. And one of the most interesting non-drug interventions he talks about is mindfulness.
Mindfulness, so like meditation and stuff.
Exactly. Things like mindfulness meditation can help people kind of change their relationship with their pain instead of fighting it or ignoring it all the time.
I've heard a lot about mindfulness lately. It seems to be gaining a lot of traction. From what I understand, it's about becoming aware of the pain without letting it control you, like accepting it as part of your experience without letting it become your whole identity.
You got it. That's a great way to put it. And more research is showing that it can be really effective for managing chronic pain. It's not a miracle cure or anything, but it gives people tools to cope.
It's like building resilience from the inside out.
I like that. And Riker goes beyond mindfulness, too. He explores physical therapy, exercise, even things like acupuncture. He really encourages people to be proactive. Experiment and see what works for them.
It's about figuring out a personalized pain management plan.
Exactly. And he also talks about how important self-care is. Things like getting enough sleep, eating healthy, managing stress, all of these things can affect how we experience pain.
It makes you realize how much control we actually have over our experience. It's pretty empowering when you think about it.
It is. And speaking of empowerment, Riker also points out how societal norms can actually affect how we deal with pain.
What do you mean?
Like, our culture often pushes this idea of just pushing through the pain, ignoring it, or masking it with medication.
It's true. It's like we're taught to just tough it out. But I can see how that could be detrimental, especially in the long run.
Exactly. People might not seek help or explore other ways to manage their pain. And this is where things get a little bit controversial. Riker talks about how certain ideologies might be shaping our understanding of pain and how we approach dealing with it.
I think I know what you're talking about. He looks at how things like what some people call woke culture might be influencing our perceptions of pain. It's almost like there's a risk of focusing so much on these external factors that we overlook the individual's needs.
It's complicated, and Riker acknowledges that these ideologies often come from a good place, a desire for more justice and equality, but he does raise concerns about this potential to create a culture where pain is, I don't know, like a source of identity or even a political tool. It's like he's cautioning us to be critical thinkers, to really question the narratives we're hearing.
That's a really good point. At the end of the day, pain affects us all, regardless of our beliefs.
Absolutely. And Even though Riker goes into these complex and sometimes heavy topics, he also talks about the power of lighter approaches. Like he dedicates a whole section to the role of laughter in pain management.
After, really. I'll admit, I was a little skeptical when I first read that.
I know, right? But he actually makes a really compelling argument. Laughter has physiological benefits. It can trigger the release of endorphins, which are natural painkillers.
So it's not about denying the pain, but finding ways to shift your perspective.
Exactly, finding moments of joy and humor even in the midst of suffering. He tells a story about a man recovering from surgery who found that watching a funny movie actually helped with his pain.
That's a great example of the mind-body connection. Positive emotions can have a real impact on how we physically feel.
It's amazing. It makes you realize how important it is to find those things that make you smile, even when times are tough. And, Riker connects this to how pain affects our work lives, too. He points out how chronic pain can lead to less productivity at work, missed days, even losing your job.
It's an issue that doesn't get talked about enough, I think, both from the employer side and the employee side. It's like we're just supposed to power through it no matter what.
Right. But Riker argues that companies need to step up and be more proactive about pain in the workplace. Things like providing accommodations and just creating a culture where people feel comfortable talking about their needs.
It's about making it okay to talk about pain at work, and it's also about taking responsibility for our own well-being in the workplace.
Exactly. Paying attention to how we're sitting at our desks, taking breaks, managing our stress levels. It's about advocating for yourself, creating an environment that supports your health, both physically and mentally. And while Riker champions all these different pain management approaches, he's also realistic about their limitations. He even has a whole chapter on the challenges of palliative care.
It might seem counterintuitive to criticize something that's supposed to alleviate suffering, but it shows how committed Riker is to being honest.
It does. He points out that palliative care isn't available to everyone, and even when it is, it doesn't always erase the pain completely. He also raises some pretty thought-provoking ethical questions about palliative care, too.
It's a sensitive topic for sure.
Mm.
I appreciate that he doesn't shy away from these tough conversations.
Me too. He also talks about technology, its role in pain management, the good and the bad.
Oh yeah, like virtual reality, right?
Yeah.
I've heard that can be helpful for pain relief.
It can be. It's a good distraction. He also talks about new medications that target specific pain pathways in the brain. But at the same time, he cautions us about becoming too dependent on technology. Human connection, empathy, that whole holistic approach, those things are still really important.
So finding that balance between the high-tech and the human touch. What else? Oh, Riker also unexpectedly dives into the connection between pain and nutrition.
I know. That chapter got me by surprise too, but it just shows how everything is connected. He talks about how the food we eat can affect how we experience pain, even suggesting that certain foods could help with chronic pain conditions.
It's pretty amazing. It's not to say that food can cure everything, but it can be a powerful tool.
Right. He stresses the importance of talking to a doctor or nutritionist to figure out the right approach. But it's definitely something to think about, right? How lifestyle choices can play a role in pain management.
For sure. Another thing I really appreciated about Riker's book is how he doesn't just throw facts and figures at you. He weaves in personal stories and even some humor to keep things interesting.
Oh, yeah, I loved that about the book. It makes it so much more relatable.
He even shares some of his own experiences with pain, which makes you realize that he's not just some expert talking at you. He's been there too. He gets it.
He does. And the stories from his patients are so powerful. They really highlight how different everyone's experience with pain is.
It's not one size fits all. And I like that he also shares some of the failures, not just the successes. It makes his perspective seem more, authentic.
Definitely. It makes him seem more human. And his writing style is great, too. Even when he's talking about really complex medical stuff, it's easy to understand.
He uses analogies and metaphors and avoids all that technical jargon. It's clear that he really cares about helping people understand this whole pain thing.
Yeah. And he wants us to feel empowered, to be able to advocate for ourselves. One of the most important messages is that pain is not a sign of weakness.
We all experience it. It's part of being human.
Exactly. And he challenges that whole societal norm of hiding it, pretending it's not there. He encourages us to talk about it.
To seek help when we need it.
Yes. It's about breaking down the stigma around pain and realizing that it's okay to ask for support.
Riker's book is almost like a call to action, right?
I think so. He wants us to rethink our whole relationship with pain, to find ways to live our best lives, even with the pain.
Thinking back on everything we've talked about, there's this one point that really stuck with me.
What's that?
Riker says pain isn't the enemy.
Oh, I remember that.
It's more like a messenger, a signal that something's off.
Yeah, it's a whole different way of looking at it, isn't it? It's easy to just want to get rid of pain completely.
I know, right? Avoid it at all costs.
But Riker says instead of being afraid of pain or trying to fight it all the time,
We can learn from it.
exactly. He even says we can use it to grow.
Now that's powerful. It's like pain can be a teacher.
Totally. And when you think about it that way, it kind of takes away the fear and shame that people often feel about pain.
It does. It makes you more curious about it.
Yeah, you start to think, okay, what is this pain trying to tell me?
Instead of seeing it as a weakness, it becomes this opportunity to change, to adapt.
And Riker reminds us that pain is something we all experience. It's part of what makes us human.
It connects us all, in a way.
It does. And through pain, we learn empathy, compassion, and resilience.
I also really appreciate that Riker gives you actual strategies for managing pain.
Yes, he brings it back down to earth.
It's not just theory. It's like, okay, here are some actual things you could do.
It's helpful because it's easy to get lost in the big picture stuff sometimes.
It is. Riker talks about creating this pain management toolbox. So you've got all these different options and you can choose what works for you.
And what works for you might change over time.
Exactly. It's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
And it's not like you find the solution and then you're done.
It's a journey.
Totally. Yeah. You got to be flexible and adapt as your needs change.
And something else Riker says that really resonated with me was just the reminder that you're not alone in this.
Oh, yeah. That's so important.
So many people deal with chronic pain.
And there's help out there.
Riker really encourages people to reach out, connect with others who get it, whether it's through support groups or online forums.
Or even just talking to friends and family.
Exactly, just breaking through that isolation.
Creating that sense of community. Okay, so we've explored Riker's ideas about pain. What's the big takeaway? What do you think he wants us to remember most?
I think he wants us to understand that while pain is a part of life,
Suffering doesn't have to be,
yeah, we can't always control the pain itself.
but we can control how we respond to it.
And that's powerful.
It is. Riker wants us to take charge, be our own advocates, and find a way to live a good life, even when it hurts.
His book is a great guide for anyone who's ever felt pain.
Which is everyone. So if you're ready to learn more about managing pain and maybe changing your relationship with it, I highly recommend checking out Pain, The Ultimate Reality. It'll make you think. It might challenge some of your assumptions.
It will definitely give you a new perspective.
And remember, pain doesn't have to be the end of the story.
It could be the start of something new, a chance to grow, become more resilient, and understand ourselves a little better.
And that's our deep dive for today. Until next time.